Road to the Pros, week 30. Man, it's been a minute, dude. It's been a minute since we've been on the air for Road to the Pros. It's been about a month or so, I think, since we did a Road to the Pros. And so this is actually week number 30. I think we left off like week 26, and I've basically just been just lurking in the shadows, just kind of hiding out, behind closed doors, just trying to get some work done, man. Just trying to execute and just trying to really focus on moving forward. And so as a result, I am down to 187, and so that's not too bad. It's still a little bit further behind from where I want it to be, but we'll talk about all that. But anyway, if you guys are checking us out for the first time, hey, my name is Jim Schultz, and thank you for popping in for this Road to the Pro series. I am in training to try to earn my pro card later on in the fall, and so I've been kind of chronicling my journey throughout, and so that's what this Road to the Pro series is. If you've checked us out before and you're coming back, hey man, I appreciate the fact that I didn't scare you off, and you're checking us out here today. So kind of wanted to update you guys on what's going on. Kind of wanted to update you guys on, how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, and what I'm trying to, change and shift around to continue to make progress. So I'm down to 187. And, it's funny because I feel like I am really starting to hit my stride. The last 2-3 weeks have been very, very solid. They've been very consistent with my training. They've been very consistent with my nutrition. And they've been really consistent with my weight loss and my fat loss. And it's not a huge surprise as to why that's the case, because I've really dialed it in with my macros, and I've kind of figured out that, man, so my week started on Saturday. So this can be a pretty common thing, right? That I know I've mentioned this before in one of the weeks prior, but it's one of those things that, man, we couldn't say this enough, because it's just real life, man. It's like clockwork. So my week started on Saturdays, right? So, hey, Chris, what's going on, man? Hanging out on a patio? Enjoying a pint? There you go. I will not be enjoying a pint with you, but thanks for catching the broadcast, man. I appreciate you very much. It's like clockwork, man. My week started on Saturday, and so I'm grinding really hard on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to hit new progress for the week, to hit a new low, whatever. And then Saturday comes, the week resets, and I had found myself for many, many weeks just eating a little bit too much food, just enjoying the weekend and the fact that it's a brand new week a little bit too much. Because, when you feel like it's a brand new week, you kind of feel like, I can be a little bit freer, I can be a little bit looser with my numbers, and I'll be okay. That's true, of course. You can do that, but you just have to be aware you're going to have to pay the piper at some point throughout the week. And so for the last couple of weeks, I haven't been perfect, but I've been much, much better in that on Saturday and Sunday, I've been like, all right, man, I've got some targets for these days. They're a little bit on the higher end so that I can kind of reset the week and recharge a little bit, but I've really kept it within reason. And lo and behold, not surprisingly, the weight, the weight on the scale has cooperated, and I'm starting to move down a little bit more. And so, that's it, man. Persistence is the key, dude. It's all about persistence. It's all about persistence and consistency. If you're looking for two secrets today, whether you're checking us out live or you're checking us out on the replay, whether it be on YouTube or I'm going to also upload it onto Facebook and Instagram TV, wherever you see this, it really is all about consistency. And so it's funny because it's the middle of July and I'm in week 30, right? Like I should be like near death by now, but I'm not. Like I feel really good. Like I feel really energized. And a big part of the reason why is not because I'm like superhuman or I'm just incredible. It's basically because from January to May, I just didn't really take it that seriously. For whatever reason, I wasn't super consistent. I wasn't super persistent. I just kept kind of falling off the rails and, trying to take shortcuts and just doing all these different things. And so as a result, from January to May, my progress was very, very inconsistent. But basically, since the beginning of June is when I really started to dial some things in, and even more specifically since the beginning of July. And so, thankfully, I was able to carve out a little bit of progress from January to May. And so, this has, believe it or not, put me in a position where I still can reach my goals come the fall. Which, for me, I know that I probably need to be 160 or lower if I really want to turn pro. Being only 5'7" and just kind of knowing where guys usually fall in line at this type of height, I probably need to be about a $160 or even in the high 150s. And so that's kind of where we stand, man. January to May was kind of whatever. We finally picked up a little bit of progress, which is nice. But here's something that's really interesting that I wanted to talk about in this week's Road to the Pros that I'm actually experiencing right now that might help you all. So it's all about calories. At the end of the day, it's all about calories, right? You could never convince me otherwise. I mean, the math is really clear. The evidence is really clear. It's all about calories. At the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, both bookends of the day is all about calories, right? Like, you need to get your calories in line if you want to lose fat. Like, focusing on these secondary things like insulin or whatever. Like, these things are important, but when it comes to fat loss, they're not as important as calories, right? Well, here's what's really interesting. On the surface, it's just a math equation, right? At level 1, it's just a math equation. You just plug in the variables and it basically spits out what you can eat. It basically spits out, where your macro targets need to be. Now, calorie surplus and calorie deficit and different macro distributions is a different discussion, right? So that's not necessarily the same thing. And Chris said a healthy caloric deficit worked for him. Absolutely, man. I know, dude. We've talked about this a ton, and that's exactly right. Like, the driver of all the results that you've experienced yourself, definitely, unequivocally, 100% the caloric deficit. Well, here's what's really fascinating about that if you go one step further, and this is something I've just recently have experienced and been reminded of, if I can talk today. It's all about calories, but there are these little thresholds in the caloric equation or in your metabolic rate or in the fill in the blank where if you're going along at some level of macros, let's just use some numbers. Let's say that you're eating 150 carbs and 70 fats a day. Let's say that's your average, right? And you're humming along and you make a little bit of progress, but then you hit a sticking point. And so for 1 week or 2 weeks or whatever, you're just stuck. And you're hitting a true 170 or 150 and 70. You're not, those numbers are accurate. They are representative of what you're actually eating. Meaning, you don't think you're eating 150 and 70 and you're really, you're biting, you're licking, you're nibbling. It's really not 150 and 70. Well, here's what's really fascinating. If you actually decrease those numbers just slightly, right? Down to take your carbs from 150 to 130, take your fats from 70 to 65. You're probably going to feel that, right? It's not going to be just some non-event that you don't even feel. You're going to feel the lower energy intake. But here's what's amazing. That's only a difference of, 20 carbs? So that's 80 calories and 5 grams of fat. So that's 45 calories. That's only a difference of 120 calories that you've cut and put yourself into a greater deficit. But oftentimes, that's all your body needs to keep going. That's all your body needs to kind of grease those wheels for fat loss and send that scale moving lower. Which, to me, that's just fascinating. That just shows us and reminds me that, okay, on the surface, it is all calories, but man, our bodies are complex. They're very, very complicated. And so there's more happening behind the scenes, right? There's more to this equation than just carbs, fats, and proteins. Yes, those are pillars in the equation, but when you start to get into your metabolic rate and how much you are burning and, your carbohydrate metabolism and just some crazy things, which that's not a real thing, I kind of just made that up. But it's just really amazing how these little decreases can actually be all you need to start losing not just a little bit of weight, but start losing 1 or 2 or 3 pounds a week again. You just need a tiny, tiny change. And so, if you take anything away from my ramblings today, thank you for those of you that were able to check us out live. I appreciate it very much. Take this, man. Take the simple fact that you only need to make small changes to sometimes lead to big results, to sometimes get you right back on track. And so if you are stuck, if you do feel like you're stagnating, man, you probably just need that little push lower, and it's going to spur the fat loss engine again and kind of get that weight loss humming along, once again. So that's it, man. Week 30, Road to the Pros. I was going to say Road to the Pros week 30, but either way it works. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that, man. Hopefully next week, I'm going to pop back on here, or maybe in a couple of weeks. I don't know that I can hang with in every single week. So I'm going to pop on here as often as I can, but I should be maybe 184, 185. So, if you got some time to pull for me and hope for me and pray for me, that would be amazing. But I hope you guys got something from this. I hope you have a great Saturday, and we'll see you next time.